No matter how hard you try, no matter how present, kind, attentive you are, nothing seems enough to be chosen, as if you're always almost there, almost valued, almost desired, almost the right man, but always left behind, and deep down, a nagging doubt starts to grow. Am I invisible? Is there something missing in me that I still haven't understood? Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul remains unconquered when it depends on nothing external," and maybe that is the blind spot. You're trying to attract someone without realizing you're trying to fill an inner void with external approval. You want to be chosen, but in the process, you forget to choose yourself first. You want to be desired, but you don't desire yourself enough to make yourself a priority. You want feminine presence, but you still haven't learned to sustain your masculine presence. What truly attracts a woman is not the car, the body, or the bank account. It's the energy. The silent energy that radiates from a man who doesn't need anyone to feel whole, who doesn't chase, who doesn't explain himself, who doesn't seek attention. He lives, and because he lives with purpose, he begins to emit a field of presence that doesn't shout, it pulls. This video is not about tactics. It's not about scripted lines or seduction strategies. It's about rediscovering a part of you that the world tried to silence. The part that carries direction, structure, firmness. The part that looks in the mirror and doesn't wait for approval. It simply walks, knowing what it came to do. The pain most men feel today is not the lack of a woman, it's the lack of center. They live trying to please, impress, prove, but the more they try, the more they lose themselves, because they were never taught to sustain their own value in silence. They were never taught to become rare before being noticed. You feel like you have to explain yourself too much, and that's exhausting. You try hard to be seen, and yet you feel disposable. But maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe the problem is this desperate attempt to be chosen, because the man who chases validation has already declared he doesn't recognize himself. A woman doesn't fall for effort. She connects with the energy of someone who knows where he's going, not with someone begging to be loved. She doesn't want to be your world. She wants to discover that you already have a universe, and that maybe there's space for her in it. And the harsh truth, she doesn't feel safe with someone who's always available. She feels drawn to someone who's in motion, because what attracts isn't neediness, it's direction. So understand, what will make a woman want to be close to you isn't what you say. It's what you hold when you're silent. It's what you vibrate when you're not trying anything. It's what you became when you stopped asking for permission to exist. If you're tired of chasing, of trying to please, of losing yourself in the quest to be accepted, breathe. You're not weak, you're confused. But that can end now, if, and only if, you have the courage to rebuild what the world tried to erase. Because with great power come many women, but only if, before anything else, you learn not to depend on any, and that begins within you, in the silence, in the posture, in the firm choice to return to your center and never leave it again. He's always there, always available, always trying to prove he's the right guy. Present on birthdays, present in the messages, present when no one else is. He believes that if he gives his all, one day she'll see, one day she'll value him, one day she'll choose him, but that day never comes. Because the more he gives, the more she pulls away. The more he molds himself, the more she loses interest. The more he tries to be perfect, the more she treats him like he's invisible. And that hurts, it cuts deep, because he doesn't understand what he did wrong. He was loyal, he was loving, he was present, and still she left. She traded him for someone who didn't do even half as much, for someone who didn't seem to care, for someone who didn't try, but still won. That's where the confusion begins. The idea that maybe being good doesn't work, that maybe loving too much is the issue. But the problem isn't love, it's the lack of structure. It's the giving without foundation. It's the excess that overflows into neediness, because the man who erases himself to be accepted unknowingly broadcasts that he has no self-worth. And that repels. Too much giving without direction becomes a burden. It becomes obligation. It becomes pressure for the one receiving and humiliation for the one offering. Because deep down, she feels she's not receiving by choice. She's receiving because he needs to be seen, and someone who needs too much becomes draining. This man believes that the more he proves himself, the more she'll admire him. But admiration doesn't come from insistence. It comes from firmness, from boundaries, from the quiet sense of self-worth. The most common pain in men's hearts today is not rejection. It's the feeling of having done everything right and still being left behind, as if the effort didn't matter, as if kindness were a punishment, as if giving didn't carry weight. But the truth is simple and harsh. Effort was never the problem. The problem is the hidden intention behind it, to be accepted at any cost. And when you do everything hoping to be validated, you've already given away your power, because the man who lives to be chosen has already declared himself insufficient. And no one admires someone who hasn't learned to choose himself first. What you feel is not weakness, it's confusion. Confusion in thinking that constant presence earns respect. Confusion in thinking that exaggerated affection generates desire. Confusion in thinking that being good is enough. But now you know, it's not about doing more. It's about being more whole, more focused, more firm. And when you become that, the world doesn't choose you out of pity. It begins to move around you by magnetism. What truly attracts a woman is not what you say, it's what you radiate. It's the energy that emanates when you're at peace with your path, when you have direction, when you don't need her to feel complete. Evolutionary psychology shows that the female brain, on deep levels, associates masculine presence with protection, stability, and progress. But it's not about money. It's not about fame. It's not about physical strength. It's about an invisible structure that only a man with purpose carries. It's the eyes of someone who has somewhere to go. It's the walk of someone who's not drifting. It's the silence of someone who doesn't need attention because he's already the center of his own universe. A man who lives for something greater emits scarcity, and everything scarce becomes valuable. A woman feels when you're too available. She feels when you're there, waiting for something. And she feels with the same intensity when you're busy being who you came to be. And that can't be taught. It must be lived. She doesn't chase the available man. She gravitates toward the focused one. The man who loses himself trying to please becomes common. But the man who builds, who sharpens his mind, strengthens his body, organizes his life, walks with discipline, becomes rare. And what's rare doesn't need to explain itself. It simply exists. Women don't look for beauty. They look for leadership, not in the sense of command, but in the sense of inspiration, of carrying something that makes them feel there's a path here, there's direction, there's steadiness, because a woman doesn't want to be the center of your life. She wants to see that you already have one and that she can add to it. She wants to see that you're already in motion and that she can walk beside you. She wants to feel that if she walks away, you won't stop. That's status, the status of someone who doesn't bend, who doesn't beg, who doesn't depend, who already understood. True value is not in being desired. It's in being indispensable to yourself. And that kind of presence can't be bought, can't be learned in a course. It's born the moment you stop chasing women and start chasing yourself. It's when you become scarce that they see you. It's when you become purpose that they're drawn. And it's when you become rare that they can no longer ignore you. There's a dangerous illusion many men carry, that to win a woman, he needs to put her on a pedestal, make her the priority, the motive, the reason, the center. But what he doesn't realize is that by doing this, he dissolves. He abandons his plans, disorganizes his routine, sacrifices his presence, all this just to be accepted. And the result is the exact opposite of what he expected. She starts losing interest. She starts pulling away. She starts to feel that instead of being beside a man, she's with an echo of her own will. Because no woman wants to be the son of a man who dims his light so she can shine. She wants to get close to someone who already radiates light. She doesn't want to be his mission. She wants to walk beside someone who's already on a mission. When you put her at the center of your life before you've built your own center, you reverse the order. You try to anchor your identity in her presence, and that transmits dependence. And dependence doesn't generate desire, it generates weight. She wants a man with territory, with vision, with discipline, with projects. She wants to be part of something that already exists, not the only pillar holding everything up. The man who lives for a woman loses his magnetism because he vibrates insecurity. He lives in expectation. He doesn't decide. He waits. He doesn't lead. He reacts, and that kills desire, because what keeps a woman connected is not how much you love her, it's how whole you remain, even while loving. When you focus on building your territory, physical, emotional, financial, spiritual, you send a silent message: I am rising, and this path doesn't stop, with or without you. And that message is irresistible, because she feels that you're not trying to hold her. You're simply saying, there's space here. If you want, walk with me. But if you don't, I'll keep going. That is real power. She wants you because she sees that you don't need her. And it's precisely because of that she wants to stay. It's not about appearing. It's about being. The man who attracts naturally isn't trying to get attention. He's too busy with his own ascension. He doesn't live reacting. He builds. And that, even in silence, becomes noise in the subconscious of those watching. Create a routine where you are your center, where your training is sacred, where your focus is non-negotiable, where your time isn't available to just any distraction, not because you're cold, but because you know the direction you're going. And men with direction are rare. Don't rush to reply, to react, to chase. Rushing reveals neediness. Urgency exposes anxiety. And anxiety is the opposite of power. Avoid arguments born from the fear of losing. Avoid emotional games that seek validation. Avoid justifying what doesn't need explanation. The admired man doesn't fight for control. He radiates dominion, and that dominion begins the moment you decide your peace is worth more than any argument. She needs to feel she's with a man in constant construction, that your days are devoted to something greater, that your life has a foundation, not a void, that your presence is a choice, not a necessity. She tests your reaction, she tests your stability, she tests your firmness. But what truly wins her over is not your response. It's who you continue being, even during the tests. You don't need to make her see your value. You need to live like someone who already knows his value and doesn't negotiate it. The secret is to be so occupied with your own evolution that she has to ask for space to come in, not out of manipulation, but because you radiate purpose. And when a man vibrates in purpose, he doesn't beg, he doesn't compete, he doesn't waver. He just moves forward, and that steady movement is what transforms respect into desire, because she understands, even without words, that you're the kind of man who doesn't wait. You build. And what you build is exactly what she wants to be part of. The body speaks before the mouth, and what it says sticks. The man who carries power doesn't need to announce it. He enters a room, and the energy shifts. Not because he's better, but because he is present, and presence is rare. Shoulders back, movement slow but firm, gaze direct but calm, silence as a response, breath that controls its own rhythm. Nothing rushed, nothing hesitant, everything intentional. It's not about appearing cold, it's about not being moved by external chaos. While others shout, he watches. While others react, he chooses. While others fight for space, he occupies his own. The language of the body reveals the state of the mind, and the mind of a powerful man is not restless, it's surgical, observant, strategic. It thinks before it speaks, it feels before it moves, it decides before it shows. Women sense this, even if they can't explain it. They feel it. They feel when they're in the presence of a man who has nothing to prove. Because true power isn't loud, it's dense, it's calm, it's solid. This man's body doesn't fidget seeking approval. It grounds itself because it already knows who it is. He doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. He doesn't need to justify to be understood. He doesn't need to chase to be valued, and because of that, he's noticed. The most attractive power is not in speech, it's in vibration, in the silent magnetism of someone who already possesses himself, who already respects himself, who has already decided. This man's body doesn't say, choose me. It says, I am, and that is enough. Marcus Aurelius said, no one has power over you unless you give it to them. And maybe that's exactly what has happened without you noticing. You gave too much. You gave your focus, your direction, your energy in hopes of being loved. But love born from total surrender to the other doesn't last, because eventually, whoever got lost trying to please becomes unrecognizable, even to himself. With great power come many women. But it's not the kind of power you imagine. It's not the car, the money, the performance. It's the kind of power that lives in silence, in your routine, in your discipline, in your ability to walk with steadiness, even without an audience. The kind of power that doesn't need to be shown because it's already felt. A woman doesn't connect with effort. She connects with clarity, with strength that doesn't impose, with direction that doesn't shift under pressure, with a man so centered, so aligned with what he came to do in this world that she doesn't want to be his center. She wants to be part of the universe he already built. The world chases the one who chases himself. And this applies to everything. The more you try to be accepted, the more invisible you become. The more you try to prove, the less she believes. But when you go quiet and become, when you walk and hold, when you stop waiting for permission and simply live, she notices, she feels it. She desires, become a man so focused, so strong, so whole that she looks at you and thinks, I want to be part of that. But even if she doesn't come, you've already won. Because the man who has found his center doesn't bow for crumbs. He is presence, he is rock, he is direction, and that no one can take away.